In a legacy environment, there is a very large batch of the code that works. And it really doesn't need any further testing because it's been through the field, it's been through production, it's a decade old, it works. And you'll probably never get that tested, and you don't need to get that tested. So in a legacy environment, the code coverage number is not very significant. Now, how do you deal with a legacy environment? That's an interesting question all by itself. You have a whole bunch of code that is not tested, that was not designed to be testable. How do you even approach getting this button that gives you the green light? How do you approach a test suite that you can trust? And the answer to that is, first of all, don't make a project out of it. Don't decide for the next 3 months, we're going to write a whole bunch of tests. This project will fail. And it will discredit everybody who's been a part of it. It will not produce the tests that you want. And it will probably leave the system in a worse shape than you began. This is what happens whenever you start a project to correct a long-term lack of discipline. The solution is to change attitude. You shift your attitude. You say, from now on, I and every member of my team, whenever we touch this code, we will make it a little bit better. This is the Boy Scout rule I talked about earlier. But when you're making a little bit better, you check out the code, you look at it, you do whatever you have to it, you make it a little bit better. When you make it a little bit better, you are thinking about how you're going to get tests in there. Now, you may be able to write a test. Don't write too many, don't go crazy, write enough tests to satisfy you for that day and then check them in. But you might not be able to write any tests because the code was not designed to be testable. It's too risky to change it to then write tests. So what you'll do then is you will make some small change to make the code approach testability, just a little bit closer. You'll break some coupling, you'll open up some function, you'll change some function argument, something like that. And then you'll check it in and walk away and hope that the next guy can push it a little closer to testing. And then bit by bit, this code will get better and better. What code will get better and better? The code that you're actually touching. There'll be a whole bunch of code in there that you never touch. That already works, you're never going to see it again. Don't go digging around in that stuff. It's the code you're actively manipulating that you want to improve. Secondly, sometimes you'll be asked to add new features. And you'll realize very quickly that there's 2 ways to add the new feature. One way is to smear a bunch of code in the existing legacy, adding if statements and flags and stuff like that so that you can get this new feature in. The other way is to write the new feature in a completely separate module and then couple that module in from the outside into the legacy code. That second way is the harder of the 2, and it's the one you should do because you can test it, you can write all of that code with tests, and you can then factor it into the legacy. So you will have improved the legacy system by doing that. Over a lot of time, the legacy code will get better and better and more tested. And then it becomes a bit like a snowball, because as it gets better and better and more tested, you start to trust the tests more. That allows you to do even more cleanup, which lets you trust the tests even more, which allows you to do more cleanup, and you get this runaway snowball effect. You're kind of hoping that'll happen sometime within a year or so. Next question. Yep.
Test environments, how many stages do you need?
How many?
In your opinion, how many different environments do you need?
Oh, you mean to test your production environment and this customer and that customer and that and this browser and that browser and that browser. The question presumes something that I'm not sure I want to presume, which is that you have entire systems set up for the purpose of testing. You may have that, but that may also not be necessary, because I don't want you on a regular basis to be testing in an offline system. I want you to have broken up your modules to the extent that you can test the individual modules and know that those modules work. And I want that to be your primary mode of testing. And then as a secondary mode of testing, you integrate those modules and test them in a lifelike environment. In that lifelike environment, how many of them do you need? And you need as many as you have production environments outside and in field environments. Now, hopefully you can take one system and alter it so that you can test it in one environment and then the next and the next, so that you're not replicating tons of hardware. But to be safe, you're going to have to test it in each production mode. So you'll have to have some way to swap the system back, change the configuration of the system to test each configuration, each production mode. That means it's going to take some time, and that's one of the reasons we want these tests to run very fast. A good suite of tests should not run for days, or even lots of hours. It should run in minutes. If it's a very, very comprehensive suite of tests that goes all the way through the GUI, it's probably going to run in a couple of hours. I don't want it to run much longer than that, certainly. And for most of the module tests, I want it to be seconds. I don't want that to take a lot of time at all. At which point I should say something about GUIs. Please do not test your business rules through the GUI. Right? A lot of people will buy these systems that allow you to let a tester drive, and the system will record what has happened, and then it will play that back and make sure that what happens on the screen is the same. These systems are a trap. When you're testing business rules, they are a trap. And the reason they're a trap is very simple. UIs change. People change GUIs, and they change GUIs for arbitrary reasons. They don't like the color. They don't like the way the windows flow. Some marketing person will read some new fad on user presentation, and then you'll have to change the order of things on the windows, and all your tests will break. And if all your tests break, then you'll be stuck in the mode of having to redo them, and you're never going to have time to redo them. It's just not going to work, and what you'll do is you'll throw them away. Don't test business rules through the UI. Test business rules through an API that gives you access, the same API that the UI uses. Design your systems so that they are decoupled enough so you can test your business rules through an API. Now, you also have to test the UI, and that's fine. And for those, you can use those systems if you'd like. When you test the UI, decouple from the main system. Replace the back-end business rules with a stub that return canned answers so that all you can test is the UI. You can't test any business rules. And that lets you test the UI independently of the business rules independent of the UI. I could push this even farther and say that you want to test the business rules independent of the database, but we probably don't want to go